When I showed up to my wife's architecture firm launch, she handed me an envelope and announced she was celebrating by divorcing me. Sign and leave, she demanded. So I walked out, quietly yanked my $750,000 in funding, and started calling in every dollar she'd blown on her affair. All right, Reddit. I spent 18 months bankrolling my wife's dream business, until she finally showed me what I was paying for, and served me divorce papers in front of everyone at the launch party. But she had no idea what was coming. Grab your popcorn and bear with me till the end. Definitely worth it. Name's Dean, 38 male. And there I was, walking into the Hyatt downtown in my best suit, thinking tonight was going to be my moment. I'm the owner of 15 fast casual restaurants across 3 states that I built from a single food truck and a dream about making decent money selling overpriced sandwiches. Tonight was supposed to be the grand opening of Sterling and Associates Architecture, my wife's dream firm that I'd been bankrolling for 18 months. The place was dripping with that expensive taste Anita always had. Modern everything. Glass walls, those weird geometric light fixtures, and a catering spread that probably ran 5 figures. Every single penny came from my accounts. Every server in a bow tie, every tray of those tiny fancy foods nobody actually eats, every crystal glass that got handed out to people I'd never met. My money, my connections, my reputation vouching for a firm that didn't have a single completed project yet. I was feeling pretty solid about the whole thing, not gonna lie. Without my wallet and my willingness to sign checks without asking too many questions, there wouldn't be any Sterling and Associates. There'd be no party. Then I heard it. This comment that cut right through all the noise. Some kid in a cheap suit, probably fresh out of design school, leaned over to his buddy and said it just loud enough. Well, looks like the test run husband actually showed up. Test run husband. The words hit wrong, but I kept walking, kept my expression neutral. Because that's what you do when you've spent 15 years dealing with health inspectors, entitled customers, and employees who think showing up on time is optional. But inside, something wasn't sitting right. I scanned the room for Anita. There she was at the podium, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. She was working the room like a politician, accepting congratulations from everyone who mattered in the architecture scene. Her business partner Miles stood off to the side, looking smug in his designer suit. And there was Caroline, Anita's mother, sitting in the front row with this satisfied smile. That woman had never liked me. Never thought a guy who started in a food truck was good enough for her daughter, who graduated summa cum laude from design school. Anita caught my eye and smiled. Then she tapped her glass with a fork, and the room fell silent. Every conversation died mid-sentence. You could hear the AC humming. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anita began in that smooth, confident voice, "thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate the launch of Sterling and Associates. This firm represents everything I've worked towards since I was a little girl, drawing buildings in my mother's office." The crowd murmured. Someone raised a glass. Then she did something that made every hair on my body stand up. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a plain manila envelope. "However," she continued, and the room went dead quiet, "before we officially open our doors to clients, I have one small piece of business to handle first." She walked down from that podium, heels clicking loud. The crowd parted. I could feel every eye in that room turn toward me. She stopped right in front of me. "Dean," she said, making sure everyone could hear her, "you've been incredibly generous. So supportive. I want everyone here to know that the first project Sterling and Associates will be handling is very personal." She handed me that envelope, turning to address the room with that practiced smile. "These are divorce papers. Dean, these are the papers. Please sign them and leave tonight. We're done here." The applause was immediate. Not from everyone, but enough people that it felt like they were celebrating my public execution. Some people gasped. I heard Caroline's laugh from the front row, this sharp, satisfied sound that told me she'd been waiting for this. I stood there holding that envelope, every instinct telling me to throw it back in her face, to cause the scene everyone was clearly expecting, to ask what happened to the woman I married 10 years ago. But that's not how I operate. So I folded that envelope in half, slid it into my jacket pocket, and walked toward the exit. Just walked out like I had somewhere better to be. Behind me, I could hear the party resuming, the music getting louder, Caroline's voice saying something about finally and should have done this years ago. I loosened my tie and stood there on the sidewalk for a minute, just letting the heat hit me. Then I smiled. Because here's what Anita and her smug business partner and her condescending mother didn't understand about me. I didn't survive in an industry with an 80% failure rate by trusting people at their word. And I sure as heck didn't make it this far without keeping receipts on everything. They thought this was checkmate. They thought they'd pulled off the con of the century, getting the working-class restaurant guy to bankroll their fancy architecture firm before cutting him loose. What they didn't know was that I'd been watching and keeping very detailed records of exactly where every dollar went. The real game was just starting, and I actually knew how to play dirty. By the time I got back to our house in Scottsdale, I was clear-headed and focused. I didn't waste time feeling sorry for myself, just went straight to my home office and pulled up my laptop. First stop, credit card statements. All of them, personal and business. I started with our joint account, the one Anita used for business expenses related to the firm. Scrolled back 6 months, then 12, then 18, right back to when we first started talking about her opening Sterling and Associates. There, right there, in month 3. A hotel charge in Sedona, the Enchantment Resort, $1,700 for one night. I remembered that weekend because Anita said she was at a design conference in Tucson. I'd been manning a grand opening in Flagstaff. Next charge, 2 months later. Another hotel. This one in Scottsdale. The Phoenician Resort. $1,200 for a night. That was the weekend she said she was meeting with potential clients who wanted privacy. I pulled up the dates on my phone calendar and cross-referenced them with Miles's social media, because people are idiots, and they always post stuff. There he was, tagged at a restaurant in Sedona the exact same weekend as the enchantment charge. Posted a picture of a sunset with some caption about necessary escapes. 3 weeks later, tagged at the Phoenician's restaurant. Same weekend as that charge. The pattern kept going. Hotel charges on weekends Anita claimed to be at conferences or client meetings, Miles's social media showing him in the same cities, same dates, sometimes the same restaurants. But the real kicker was in the business account I'd set up for Sterling and Associates, the one I'd seeded with $750,000 to get the firm started, the one Anita had full access to because I trusted my wife. Charges to furniture stores, sure. Office equipment, fine. Software subscriptions, whatever. But then there were the other charges. Restaurants where the bills ran $400-500 for 2 people. Luxury deliveries to an apartment address I didn't recognize. Monthly charges to a luxury car rental service. And here's the thing that made me actually laugh. Monthly payments to something called Ember Luxury Suites. $5,000 a month starting in month 6. 12 months total so far. $60,000. I pulled up Ember Luxury Suites. Fully furnished executive apartments in downtown Phoenix. Month-to-month leases for professionals who needed a discreet secondary residence. I sat back in my chair and just let that sink in. My wife and her business partner had been running their affair out of an apartment I was paying for. Using money I'd given them to start a business, they'd set up their own personal love nest. It was almost impressive. Almost. My phone buzzed. Text from my manager at the Tempe location, asking about scheduling. Drew had been with me since location 3, worked his way up from line cook to general manager because he was smart and reliable and cared about the business. I sent back a quick response, then stared at that credit card statement again. $60,000 for an affair apartment, plus probably another $20,000-30,000 in hotel stays and fancy dinners and all the other stuff that goes into maintaining a side relationship. So let's do the math. $750,000 in initial business funding. Another $400,000 over 18 months for office build-out, equipment, software, salaries for the 3 junior architects Anita had hired. Then add the personal account charges I'd been covering, the joint credit cards, the business expenses that somehow always ended up on my cards. I opened a blank document and started making a list. Every single dollar that went somewhere other than legitimate business expenses. It took me 3 hours to compile it all. By the time I was done, the sun was coming up, and I had a document that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. But here's where Anita made her critical error. See, when I initially funded Sterling and Associates, she was so eager to get her hands on that money that she barely glanced at the corporate paperwork. She signed operating agreements, partnership documents, financial oversight contracts, all the boring legal stuff. What she didn't notice was that I'd structured everything as a business loan with very specific terms, repayment schedules, performance benchmarks, and most importantly, a clause that let me call the entire loan due immediately if I could prove funds were being misappropriated. I'd done the same thing with a restaurant location that went sideways 3 years ago. The partner tried to use business funds for personal expenses. I documented everything, triggered the misappropriation clause, and legally repoed the entire operation. I pulled up my lawyer's contact, my business attorney, Celeste, who'd helped me structure every restaurant deal I'd ever done, sent her an email and attached my 3-hour spreadsheet of financial evidence. Then I waited. Banks don't open until Monday morning, and I needed business hours to move that kind of money. So I spent Sunday getting everything else ready. By the time Celeste called me back Sunday afternoon, I had a pot of coffee going and a plan that was going to make Anita's public humiliation look like a warm-up act. Dean, Celeste said, sounding impressed, I read through your documentation. How fast do you want to move on this? First thing Monday morning. Good, because this is the cleanest misappropriation case I've seen in 10 years. We can have papers filed by end of business Monday. Do it. And Celeste, make it loud. I could hear the smile in her voice. Oh, this is going to be fun. After I hung up, I sat there with my coffee and thought about Anita sleeping, probably next to her phone that was already blowing up with congratulations from last night. She had no idea what was coming. Monday morning, I was at the bank when they opened at 8. Transferred the entire $750,000 from the Sterling and Associates business account to my business holding account. Not illegal. I was listed as the primary account holder with full transfer authority. Anita had signing privileges, but I'd made sure I maintained ultimate control. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in my office at the flagship restaurant, the one I still ran personally because I like staying connected to where it all started, when my phone started lighting up. Anita. 18 missed calls before 9:30. Miles. 7 calls. Caroline. 12 calls, which was hilarious because that woman had barely spoken to me in 5 years, except to make snide comments. I ignored every single one. Drew showed up at 9:30 with coffees and that knowing look that said he'd heard something through the grapevine. 29 years old, Vietnamese kid who'd worked in restaurants since he was 16. Smart and loyal to a fault. Boss, he said, setting down an Americano on my desk. Word is your wife's firm is having some cash flow problems this morning. Is that right? Yeah. Also heard you got served divorce papers at her opening party on Saturday. That true? In front of about 200 people, yeah. Drew winced. That's cold, man. What are you gonna do? Already did it. I told him about it. Drew let out a low whistle. And they found out this morning. Probably when they tried to make payroll for those 3 junior architects they hired. Or maybe when their landlord's automatic payment bounced. Wow. Drew sat down in the chair across from my desk. She didn't see it coming? Apparently not. Too busy planning my public humiliation. My phone buzzed again. Text from Anita. Call me right now. I ignored it. Another text. This is serious, Dean. The firm's account is empty? Ignored. Another one. This is theft. I'm calling the police. I actually laughed at that one. She thinks she's calling the cops on me for taking back my own money. Around 11, a woman I didn't recognize showed up at the restaurant asking for me. Young, maybe 25, wearing a business suit. Anita's assistant. Mr. Bennett? She looked like she'd been crying. I'm Selena. I work for Sterling and Associates. Anita asked me to deliver this. She handed me a large manila envelope, heavier than the one from Saturday night. What is it? I don't know. She just said it was urgent and I had to get it to you personally. Selena shifted awkwardly. Mr. Bennett, I don't know what's happening, but we didn't get paid this morning and there's some kind of problem with all the vendor accounts, and Anita's been locked in her office with Mr. Miles Langford and her mother for 2 hours, and everyone's freaking out. Sounds complicated. After Selena left, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Anita and what looked like a settlement proposal. The note was, Dean, we need to talk about this immediately. What you did is illegal, and we will pursue legal action. However, if you're willing to be reasonable, we can work something out. Call me. The settlement proposal was even better. Basically, it suggested I return the $750,000 to the business account, accept a consulting fee of $50,000 for my initial investment, and agree to a quiet divorce with no public statements. In exchange, Anita wouldn't pursue legal action for theft, and we could both move on professionally. She was trying to negotiate, still thought she had leverage. I texted back. One word. No. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Anita. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Then Celeste called. I've got some interesting news. Anita's attorney just filed an emergency motion trying to freeze your accounts and force you to return the funds to Sterling and Associates. They're claiming spousal theft. Spousal theft of my own money from my own business account? That's their argument. They're saying the funds were a marital asset and you can't unilaterally remove them without court approval. Except I have signed documents showing it was a business loan. Exactly. Which is why their motion is going to get laughed out of court. But Dean, there's something else. I did some digging on Miles Langford like you asked. The guy's got a history. He was a junior partner at a firm in San Diego 5 years ago. Left under suspicious circumstances involving misuse of client funds. Nothing was charged, but he settled with the firm privately. So he's done this before. Looks like it. And here's the fun part. His ex-wife filed for divorce claiming adultery. With a client. He's got a pattern. I sat back in my chair, processing that. Celeste, how fast can you move on the misappropriation claim? Papers are already drawn up. I can file this afternoon. But once I file this, it's war. Anita and Miles will fight back hard. Her mother probably has money for lawyers. Good. File it. By the end of Monday, Celeste had filed a civil suit against both Anita and Miles personally, claiming fraudulent misappropriation of business funds. The evidence was all there in black and white. Every hotel charge. All of it. We also filed a demand for immediate repayment of the full business loan, plus interest and damages. Total amount? $1.85 million. And here's the beautiful part. Because Miles was listed as a co-founder and co-signer on the business loan documents, he was personally liable too. Tuesday morning, I was back at the restaurant going over inventory when Drew came in with his phone out. Boss, you seeing this? He showed me his screen. Someone had posted on one of those architecture industry forums. Apparently, Sterling and Associates had canceled all their client meetings for the week. Their website was down, and someone claimed they'd seen moving trucks at the office. They're folding already? Drew looked impressed. That was fast. But they don't have a choice. Around noon, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Is this Dean Bennett? Man's voice, older, authoritative. Who's asking? Judge Porter. I'm a colleague of Caroline Sterling's. She asked me to reach out to you as a favor. Mr. Bennett, I understand you're having some difficulties with your wife, and you've taken some aggressive financial actions. I had to bite back a laugh. Caroline called in a favor from a judge to intimidate me. Judge Porter, with all due respect, this is a business matter between me and two people who misappropriated my funds. I'm hoping to encourage you to be reasonable. Anita made a mistake with how she handled the divorce announcement, but destroying her business out of spite isn't the answer. Destroying her business? I just took back money that legally belonged to me. Money she was using to rent an apartment for her affair with her business partner. Silence on the other end. I wasn't aware of that detail. Yeah, well, there's a lot of details Caroline probably didn't share. Check the court filings. It's all documented. More silence. Then, Mr. Bennett, I apologize for bothering you. This isn't what I was told. Caroline Sterling tried to intimidate me with a judge, and it backfired when he found out what actually happened. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Miles. We need to talk. Man to man. I stared at that message for a solid minute. The trust fund architect who thought he was slick wanted to talk man to man. I texted back. Sure. Come by the restaurant tonight. 9 p.m. Come alone. His response came fast. I'll be there. Oh, this was going to be good. Miles showed up at 9:15. I'd sent the closing staff home early and was sitting at the bar in the empty restaurant with a cold coffee. Miles walked in trying to look confident. Expensive suit, expensive shoes. Everything about him screamed money he didn't earn himself. Dean. He nodded like we were old friends. You're late. Sorry, traffic was... No, it wasn't. Phoenix doesn't have traffic at 9 p.m. You were late because you're disrespectful and you thought making me wait would give you some kind of edge. It didn't. That threw him off balance. Good. Look, Miles said, sitting down at the bar uninvited. I came here to try to work something out. What's happening right now doesn't help anyone. What's happening right now is I took back money that you and Anita were using to fund your affair. Seems pretty straightforward to me. It's not like that? Really? Because I've got 18 months of credit card statements, hotel charges, that luxury apartment you rented with my money, all those expensive dinners. His jaw tightened. Anita and I have a professional relationship that evolved into something more. It wasn't planned. How romantic. Did you plan it before or after you convinced her to get her husband to invest almost $2 million? The firm is dead without that operating capital, Miles said, switching tactics. 3 junior architects are going to lose their jobs. You're destroying people's lives. No, I'm just collecting what's owed. There has to be a compromise. Let me stop you right there, I said. You're not here to negotiate. You're here because you're panicking. I stood up and walked around the bar, getting close enough that Miles had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. You and Anita are going to repay every penny, plus interest, plus damages. And if you don't, I'm making sure every architecture firm in the Southwest knows exactly what kind of person you are. He stood up, trying to recover some dignity. You know what? You're bitter and vindictive, and this is all about your ego being hurt. Anita wanted out of your marriage for years, but she was too afraid to leave because you controlled all the money. Is that what she told you? I smiled. Here's the truth. Anita wanted the money, and the status, and the lifestyle, but she didn't want the guy who gave it to her. She wanted someone with the right pedigree. Someone like you. And you were stupid enough to think that made you special. And when the money runs out, you'll find out exactly how much you matter to her. I walked to the front door and opened it. We're done here. See you in court. Miles tried to maintain his composure as he walked out, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He knew I was right. After he left, I locked up and sat in the empty restaurant for a few minutes. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Wednesday morning, I got a call. Let it go to voicemail. The message was Caroline's voice, sharp and imperious like she was leaving instructions for a servant. Dean, I'm coming to your restaurant this morning at 9. We need to discuss this situation like adults. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be. Typical Caroline, always assuming people would just fall in line with whatever she wanted. I called Drew. Need you at the flagship by 8:30. Anita's mother is coming by to cause problems, and I want a witness. The dragon lady? Oh man, this is going to be good. Caroline showed up at 9 on the dot. She walked into my restaurant like she was inspecting a health code violation. Nose wrinkled like the smell of food offended her. Dean, she didn't sit down. We need to talk about what you're doing to my daughter. Morning, Caroline, coffee? I'm not here for coffee. I'm here because you're behaving like a vindictive child, and it needs to stop. Drew was standing behind the bar pretending to check inventory, but clearly listening. I'd positioned myself between two tables. Vindictive? That's called business. You're destroying Anita's career out of spite. She made a mistake with how she handled the announcement, but that doesn't give you the right to... Did she tell you about the apartment? I interrupted. Caroline paused. What apartment? The luxury apartment she and Miles rented with my money. $5,000 a month for 12 months. Did she mention any of that? Her expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker behind her eyes. Anita's personal choices are between you and her. What matters now is that you're using money as a weapon. No, what matters is fraud, misappropriation of business funds. That's actually illegal. You've been financially controlling throughout your marriage. Anita told me everything. I laughed. Caroline, your daughter spent $140,000 on personal expenses last year. I paid for all of it and never said a word. I've got the statements if you want to see them. You're lying. I've got credit card records that say otherwise. Want to see them? Her jaw tightened. This vendetta is going to hurt you more than her. She has lawyers, resources, family who will support her. She has lawyers she can't afford and resources she doesn't have anymore. Family support doesn't pay back fraudulent loans. I'm warning you. Drop this lawsuit and walk away quietly before this gets uglier. Or what? Or I'll make sure you regret it. I have connections in this city. There it was. Let me make something clear, I said, voice dropping low and even. You want to come after my businesses? Try it. But your threats don't scare me. You're making a mistake. No, you are. Get out of my restaurant. Excuse me? You heard me. This is my property. Leave, or I'll have you escorted out for trespassing. Her face flushed red. How dare you? If you don't leave, I'll call the cops and have you removed for trespassing. Drew's phone was already in his hand, camera pointed at Caroline. Want me to call the cops, boss? Caroline looked between me and Drew, finally realizing she'd lost whatever leverage she thought she had. This isn't over. She turned and walked out. After she was gone, Drew let out a low whistle. Man, that woman is something else. My phone buzzed. Text from Anita. My mother said you were incredibly rude and threatening. This is escalating and you need to stop. I typed back one sentence. See you in court. Then I blocked her number. The next 4 weeks were chaos. Sterling and Associates officially closed their office 5 days after Caroline's visit. Couldn't make rent, couldn't pay staff, couldn't cover utilities. The landlord locked them out with half their furniture still inside. Celeste called me the following Monday with an update. The misappropriation claim is solid. Bad news is they're fighting dirty. Filed a countersuit claiming you manipulated Anita into signing documents she didn't understand. She has an architecture degree and an MBA. I know, it's garbage, but it'll drag out. Let it drag. The chaos wasn't just legal. My restaurants got hit with dozens of fake one-star reviews over 3 days. All suspiciously similar, all claiming issues that never happened. Caroline making good on her threats. Drew caught it first. Boss, someone's running a smear campaign. Already reported them. Takes time to remove. Then, one of my suppliers called about someone impersonating health department officials, asking questions about my locations. But the real problem came from Miles's father. Samuel Langford showed up 2 weeks into the chaos with 2 lawyers in tow. Distinguished guy in his 60s, expensive everything. Mr. Bennett, I'm Samuel Langford. I'm prepared to offer you $300,000 to drop the lawsuit. I had to bite back a laugh. Your son helped my wife steal almost $2 million. You think 300,000 makes that go away? Samuel's expression hardened. Take the offer, or I'll make sure this lawsuit costs you more in legal fees than you'll ever recover. I have attorneys on retainer who bill 800 an hour. Nope, you're making a mistake. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Answer's still no. That same afternoon, the health department showed up for a surprise inspection. Completely random, they said. I knew better. Someone called in a false complaint hoping they'd find violations. They didn't. My restaurants were always clean, but it still cost me 4 hours of lost business. 3 days later, Anita called from a different number. Dean. Her voice sounded tired, strained. This has gone too far. Can we please just talk like adults? Nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. The firm is dead. Miles and I are both buried in legal bills we can't pay. His father is threatening to cut him off financially if this gets any worse. My mother is barely speaking to me because I lost the money she'd invested too. Caroline invested in the firm? 50,000. She was going to be a silent partner. Now that's gone too, and she's furious. That explained why Caroline was so invested in threatening me. Not my problem, I said. Dean, I'm sorry, okay? But can we please find a way to end this? You want it to end? Pay back what you owe. I can't. You know I can't. We have nothing. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them. You're going to destroy us over this? Completely ruin two people's lives? I'm not destroying anything. I'm just holding you accountable for your choices. Big difference. She was crying now. There has to be something we can work out. There isn't. See you in court. I hung up and blocked that number too. That night, I sat in my home office going over the damage. Legal fees were piling up. My restaurants were holding steady despite the fake reviews and harassment, but the stress was affecting my staff. Drew had been putting in 70-hour weeks helping me manage everything. Celeste was billing me thousands a day to fight off Anita's countersuit and deal with Samuel Langford's lawyers. This was costing me. Maybe not as much as it was costing Anita and Miles, but still, real money, real time, real energy that should have been going into my business. But some things were worth the cost. And watching Anita's perfect life crumble piece by piece, that was worth every penny. 6 weeks after everything imploded, Celeste called with news. They're settling. Anita and Miles are both agreeing to the full repayment terms. Structured payments over 7 years, garnished from any income they earn. It's not perfect, but it's documented and enforceable. What changed? Samuel cut off Miles completely, told him to handle his own mess. And Caroline apparently ran out of patience with Anita's situation. Without family money backing them, they can't afford to keep fighting. So I won. You won. Papers should be ready to sign by the end of the week. I should have felt more satisfied, should have felt vindicated, but I just felt tired. The restaurants were fine. The fake reviews had been removed, and the business was steady. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction I'd expected a year ago. Saturday afternoon, I was at the flagship restaurant doing inventory when the front door opened. I glanced up expecting a customer who hadn't seen the closed sign. It was Anita. She looked tired. No makeup. Eyes puffy and red. Dean, her voice was quiet. I know you probably don't want to see me. She walked to the bar and sat down on a stool. I didn't stop her. I signed the settlement papers yesterday, she said. 7 years of payments. Basically, every dollar I make above poverty level goes to you until the debt is paid. That's the deal. Anita flinched. I know. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything we built together. Is there a point to this? I came to ask if there's any chance we'd try to fix things between us. We can work through this. 10 years has to count for something. I stopped counting inventory and looked at her. Saw the desperation in her eyes. The hope that maybe, somehow, she could salvage this. You're serious. I am. I made terrible mistakes, Dean. I got caught up in this idea of who I was supposed to be, and I forgot about who I actually was. Miles was a mistake. The divorce was the worst mistake of my life. And I know I can't undo any of it, but maybe we could start over? Try again? No. The word came out flat. Dean, please, let me make something clear. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Those were conscious decisions because you thought you were smarter than me. I didn't. Yeah, you did. You thought I'd be so grateful that someone like you married someone like me that I'd accept whatever you did. You thought wrong. Her eyes filled with tears. But I've lost everything. My firm, my career, my reputation. I have nothing left. And you think that's my problem? I think maybe we could help each other. Start fresh. You humiliated me in front of 200 people and acted surprised when I fought back. We're not having that conversation. She stood up, wiping her eyes. So that's it? 10 years together and it means nothing? It meant something. Past tense. You killed it when you handed me those divorce papers. I don't believe that. I think you still love me. No, I don't. She opened her mouth to respond, but I kept going. You'll spend the next 7 years paying back that debt. And every month when you see that garnishment, I want you to remember you had a husband who loved you and supported you. And you threw it away for an affair with a trust fund kid who bailed when things got hard. That's your choice to live with. I walked to the front door and opened it. Have a good life, Anita. Hope it was worth it. She stood there for a moment, maybe hoping I'd change my mind, maybe just processing that it was really over. Then she walked out without another word. I locked the door behind her and stood there for a minute, waiting to feel something. Regret, maybe, or guilt, or satisfaction. What I actually felt was free. Drew came out from the back office where he'd clearly been listening. Boss? That was cold as ice. She earned it. Yeah, she did. You okay? I'm good. I'm... Come on, we've got inventory to finish. Back to work, huh? Always. As I went back to counting inventory and planning expansion and doing all the actual work that built my business, I realized something. Anita spent 10 years wanting to be someone impressive, someone important, someone who mattered in the architecture world. And I'd spent 10 years building something real, creating jobs and opportunities, and a business that would outlast any drama. She got her moment in the spotlight at that opening party. I got 15 successful restaurants and a franchise deal in the works. 6 months later, I was at a restaurant industry conference in Seattle when I ran into Selena, Anita's former assistant. She was working at an architecture firm, looked happy and successful. Mr. Bennett, I didn't know you'd be here. Industry conference. Negotiating a regional franchise agreement. You? The firm I work for is presenting on sustainable design. She hesitated. I heard about everything that happened. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Appreciate that. Anita's working as a freelance designer now. Small residential projects. Barely making ends meet from what I heard. That's what happens when you burn your reputation. She came by our firm asking if we were hiring. We weren't. Selena smiled. Honestly, even if we were, nobody wants to touch her. Word gets around. We talked for a few more minutes about industry trends. Normal conversation? Professional? As I walked away, I realized I didn't care what happened to Anita anymore. Didn't care if she was struggling or succeeding. She was just someone I used to know. And I was the owner of a growing restaurant franchise with expansion into 4 new states and a consulting offer from a national hospitality group. Guess we both got what we wanted in the end. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.